Calculation. The nothing personal word of the day for today is calculation. Yes, it is me, Matthew COCA, and I will be running the show for today. David is not here, but I have a very special guest with me. The World Baseball Classic was crazy yesterday with Team USA. We could be talking about the Maxx Crosby situation and the Ravens because everybody knows that I am a huge Ravens fan. We are going to have Jeremy Tache on later to talk about Bam Adebayo and his historic night. But my first guest it's perfect, right? He is the expert. He is everybody's favorite Canadian. And I am talking about my man, Adnan Virk. Adnan, welcome to the show.
Coke, it's great to see you, buddy. I mean, years ago when I was a guest here on Nothing Personal, Samson made it clear it's a very strict rule. All guests can only come on once. We violated that because I came back as a guest just for Oscars talk a year ago, and we are going to talk Oscars. And now you're right, I'm back once again. Of course, I wish it was under better circumstances for David, but I know he'll be back on the program shortly. And as you said, the stars have aligned as far as you, me, and Tache today. Bam! Scores 83 points last night. Besting Kobe Bryant. So Tache's locked into all things Heat. He's going to join us the second hour here on Nothing Personal. And you and me are going to rock right now talking about the World Baseball Classic and some Oscar talk. And you're not a hockey guy, so I cannot wait to throw in some hockey stuff for you. And my beloved Philadelphia Eagles right now, ravaged by free agency on day one, but day two making a bit of a comeback. And I was unaware of your adoration of the Ravens, so we do need to discuss Maxx Crosby. I can just imagine where your headspace is at right now. What a bizarre scenario that has been. Speaking of Canadians, we'll also get into my duet with Michael Bublé. Unbelievable moment for me, which took place in Vancouver on Monday night. But we do begin with the World Baseball Classic, and an absolute stunner. So, obviously, Mark DeRosa is a friend and colleague from our days at MLB Network. He and I were together in Arizona last year at spring training. And what was fascinating to me is how much Dero was thinking about the World Baseball Classic a year ago in Scottsdale. We're there at Royals camp, and I interviewed Vinny Pasquantino. And he comes over to Dero afterwards and goes, "Hey, just so you know, I'm Italian, but I'm also American." You know, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Vinny walks away. Obviously, he's a great personality, great guy. And Dero looked at me and he was like, "Come on." I was laughing too. I was like, Vinny Pasquantino is not going to be on Team USA. I'm like, yeah. And now we fast forward a year later. I'm sitting there watching that game last night going, oh my God, Italian breakfast, the Pasquatch, and Team Italy beating USA 8-6. Absolute stunner. And watching that game unfold last night, I know you watched every single pitch. Once I saw Caglione go deep, I was like, all right, like 3-0 deficit, you're like, all right, it happens. Once it's 5-0, and this has now been a surprisingly riveting tournament because going into it, if somebody said to me, what's your interest in the World Baseball Classic? You're a baseball lover like David, a fellow seam head, I would have said, listen, I think in the years past, it was a glorified exhibition, but it's now really grown in interest level significantly. And a lot of that goes back to what happened last time and the fact that you had a tournament end with Mike Trout whiffing against Shohei Ohtani. So people saw that, and D-Rose said to me, listen, when I was recruiting a few years ago, it was tough, particularly pitching. You have no idea the constraints I have. And I said, D-Rose, it's the teams. He goes, no, it's everyone. It's the teams, it's the players, it's the agents, it's the wives, it's the families. So it's easy to dump on Tarek Skubal and go, bro, you're the best pitcher in the world, and you're available for 3 innings against Great Britain, and that's it. But he's a pending free agent. He's hoping to get $400 million. The Tigers don't want to see him get hurt. He doesn't want to get hurt. Scott Boras doesn't want to see him get hurt. So this is the situation we're dealt with. And D-Rose said in the years past, because that was the greatest challenge for him, as far as a manager, knowing I've got strict pitch counts and strict allowances when it comes to these guys. Now this year, he's got some bigger names, certainly. Skubal, Skeens, notably. But again, it's going to be a challenge as far as to how much you can stretch these guys out. But what happened last night has nothing to do with pitch counts, has nothing to do with limitations, has nothing to do with excuses. Nolan McLean's a stud. Nolan McLean is one of the best young pitchers in baseball. He's my pick to win the Cy Young the Rookie of the Year this year.
Rookie of the Year.
And last night got lit up, period. Just didn't pitch well. And once I saw Yarbrough get up the home run to Jack Caglione, I go, okay, we got something here, 5-0. And the Italians get the best celebration going, espresso machine, the fingered salute, the double kiss. And when it's 8-0, you figure it's ball game. Now, credit to USA for battling back, and Joe Davis and John Smoltz, great job on the call. My buddy Adam Amin was fabulous the first 2 games for USA. But Joe made a good point. If anyone just thinks, well, it's a preliminary round, just trying to escape your pool, who cares? No, this is important because USA now, by losing this game, they're 3-1. The Italians are 3-0, and now have a critical game today. So break down the tiebreaker, Coca, why last night's game was so important and what every American baseball fan should be cheering for today.
Yeah, the way that it works now is the simplest way to look at it is if Italy beats Mexico, the USA advances, or if Mexico scores 5 or more runs against Italy, the USA advances. Then it gets into if there's a tie, then we go to another sort of calculation. But this is the same math that Mark DeRosa was supposed to be doing before the game started. And he was on Hot Stove and he said something where he believes that he misspoke, where he said that Team USA had already qualified. They punched their ticket to the next round, to the knockout phase of the World Baseball Classic. And after the game, people brought that up and they said to him, hey, did you guys know going into this game that you weren't a surefire bet to make it to the next round? And he said, listen, I misspoke, right? We did the calculations. We did realize that, if we lost this game, that something would happen. But when you look at the game and you look at the lineup that was put out there, you had Harper, who hasn't had a great World Baseball Classic, and I'll give DeRosa and Team USA that. Cal Raleigh, after his historic season last year, he's not playing, right? He's on the bench, and they have Will Smith starting over him. Bryce Terang, who was a great bat this entire tournament, he wasn't starting on the team. So you look at that, and then you look at some of the decisions that happened in the game, right? It's 8-0. They start going to the bullpen. They start fighting back, and they're coming back in this game. Pete Crow Armstrong had 2 huge home runs in it. But then you see Clayton Kershaw up, and he's warming up. And everything that we were told before the tournament was that he would be, just a guy that you threw out there, if the game got away. And it was one of those situations. But now it's like, okay, Team USA is fighting back. They can't give up any more runs. And you see Kershaw up, and then they sit him. And they bring in Mason Miller. So it's like the decisions that were happening in the game and during the game kind of looked like DeRosa really and Team USA didn't know that they had to fight back and they had to score more runs because they didn't qualify.
Yeah, the Clayton Kershaw part of it is interesting. Because remember when he got named, people are like, what is Clayton Kershaw going to bring to the table? Now, we all know he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the great pitchers of the last 50 years, but he's done. Like, he's topping at 90 miles an hour. So he's clearly not starting a game because you have better starting pitchers available at your disposal, Ski and Skubal, Noel McLean, and he's certainly not going to be a reliever because who's scared of Clayton Kershaw throwing 87? So you're right. The only way that I thought Clayton Kershaw is even really on the team is long relief. I'm like, God forbid if the Americans were down 8-0 and the game is immaterial, well, I guess Kershaw can wear it. Or if you were up 8-0 and didn't want to use any pitchers, well, then again, Clayton Kershaw can come in and throw some pitches. In a tight, close game, which you feel like you have to win, you're right. There's no way Clayton Kershaw is going to be seeing the ball field. So it's a fascinating development. At the very least, as I like to say, if you don't have a dog in the race, you just want drama, you just want excitement. And as I said, it went from a glorified exhibition, who really cares, to now there's something at stake. Like, if the USA doesn't advance out of their pool, that is a gargantuan upset. That is a massive story. And a part of the excitement and the appeal of this tournament is the timing. Now, people have criticized and said, well, is there a better time to do it when hitters would be in sync and when pitchers would be stretched out? Now, everyone's focused on the Olympics a couple years from now, in Los Angeles. Maybe Rob Manfred can work out a deal, and we're going to see Aaron Judge playing at Dodger Stadium against Shohei Ohtani, Japan versus USA. But until then, this is what it is. This is the reality we're facing, which is that this is the time for the World Baseball Classic before the season begins. Yes, there's some risk that guys can get hurt, and yes, there is a challenge in that pitchers are not going deep into games. But ultimately, if you're a baseball player, if you're passionate, if you have that level of patriotism, you want to be there representing your country. And D-Ro told me, because there was a lot more people and a lot more names that said, I want in. After they saw what happened, Trout, Ohtani last time, no, I want in. So 3 years later, this has taken on more significance. And again, the calendar is critical. Here in the Northeast, we're starting to get a little warmer weather, but still a whole lot going on. Regular season NBA, regular season hockey, NFL free agency, but not actual games. So you're still waiting about a month till April gets going, actual baseball, playoffs for basketball and hockey. So it's a good time on the calendar. I mean, I remember I worked Friday, came on Friday. What's up? Well, USA's on. Great. Saturday night, a little baseball action. You get to watch Jazz Chisholm. And we shouldn't be too shocked, Coke, at this result, because what's happened is that, yes, the USA are prohibitive favorites. And Japan's a juggernaut. They're 4-0, looked unbelievable. And the Dominican Republic, their lineup is a veritable who's who of all-stars. When you're looking at all the talent they're trotting out. Soto, Tatis, Machado, Caminero, Perdomo. Like, it's ridiculous. All those guys can hit. Not sure they can pitch it up, but the DR can hit. So in theory, according to the odds, it was U.S., Japan, Dominican Republic, but upsets do happen. And these kind of tournaments, as we just saw at the Olympics, Canada almost lost to Czechia. Canada almost lost to Finland. And then Canada outplayed USA and then still lost because Connor Hellebuyck stood on his head. So just because USA has the best roster doesn't mean they're going to win. What is notable is that they lost to Italy. Like, that's the shock. If you said to me they lost to Dominican Republic, I'm like, bro, that team's loaded. If they lost-
Italy's 1 for 5 hitters went 0 for 22 in the game. So it wasn't even one of those. It wasn't even one of those things that, like, it was the bottom of the lineup that was able to get this done. And I want to go back to one of the things you said earlier, where you said, people had always felt as if this was a glorified exhibition game.
Yeah.
But that's just the American feel to it, right? Where it's like, if you watch these other teams and you've watched them throughout the history of the tournament, they love it. They live and breathe every single pitch and every single at bat. And that was one of the big main drivers for me to be like, what are we doing here? When you have Bryce Harper coming out, at the tournament saying, hey, the Olympics is bigger than the World Baseball Classic. We need to be at the Olympics. But then you have the Dominican team who is filled with MLB superstars. And they are loving every second of this. The crowd is loving it. You watch Ronald Acuna for Venezuela. It's not an exhibition game for him where he's sprinting around the field, things he wasn't doing at spring training. He's doing for Team Venezuela. You look at Team Japan. You look what it meant for Team Australia to almost make it to the next round. It means so much to these other international teams that you were looking at Team USA to say, hey, we have 2 guys in Tarek Skubal and Paul Skeens who are coming out and saying, hey, having Team USA written across my chest means more to me than anything else in my career so far. But then you have players who are looked upon to be the superstars. Then stay home, right? Because there are other players in Major League Baseball who could be representing Team USA, who could be going out there and who could be making a difference, who could be caring about this a little more. Because Bryce Harper had a chance to have a moment. He came up to the plate. I think there were 2 men on, and he flies out because he didn't start in the game. Aaron Judge could have had this moment, and I'm not saying that Aaron Judge doesn't care about it. I'm just saying the way he goes about, playing in games, the fun and the joy, you don't see that like you see from a guy like Paul Crow Armstrong, who hits 2 home runs and he's flying around the bases, pumping his fist in the air, going crazy. It just felt different for all these other teams. And then you watch Team USA and you're like, where is that? Where's that joy? Where's that fun that all these other teams are bringing to the game?
Yeah, you have to hope that this is that wake-up call for USA, because you're right. For the other countries, it means so much. My friend and colleague, Alex Cora, when we worked together at ESPN, he was the GM of Puerto Rico, and he was thinking about it 24/7. He's like, "Oh, this means so much to the island countries." I mean, those are the games you go, "Oh my God!" When you're watching Dominican Republic against Puerto Rico or against Venezuela or Cuba, I'm like, those fans are into it from the first pitch. They are so passionate. And you're right. If you ask those players, what's more important to you, a World Baseball Classic title or a World Series, they'd say WBC. Which would be crazy to an American. Like, what? The World Series of America? They go, no, we want to win the WBC. They care about it so much, and they're so passionate. You mentioned Australia. Even for Canada, I was texting my buddy Ryan Dempster. Of course, Demp, former major leaguer, would always pitch for Canada. And I said, how are we looking before the first game? He goes, honestly, if we can pitch, Canada's going to be able to hang in. Owen Casey, the pride of Burlington, Ontario, great prospect with the Cubs, got traded to the Marlins for Edward Cabrera. He goes deep in that first game. We've got the Naylor brothers, Jameson Taillon, Cal Quantrill. I mean, it's come to the point where in the past you'd go, oh, I've heard of a couple of these guys, and then it's a bunch of dudes. Now it's like, no, there's a lot of major leaguers on these rosters, and especially the non-American teams who are taking it seriously. Canada lost to Panama the other day 4-3. I said, wow, that's over. No, beat Puerto Rico yesterday 3-2. I'm like, wow, that's a massive win for Canada. Now they're going to play Cuba today and potentially advance. So it's non-traditional teams, so to speak, that are able to step up. And you're right. For USA, you got punched in the mouth. No doubt about it. You lost to Italy. You should not have lost to Italy. That is a gigantic upset. If things go your way and Italy plays as well as they did against you, hopefully they win against Mexico. The USA advances. And this is their moment that, okay, take a deep breath. This is high-stakes baseball right now. You cannot afford another loss. I can't even imagine, Coca, the reaction if things do not go their way. If, as you said, those tiebreakers, if Mexico wins and wins the game 4-3 and the USA is ousted, I mean, that would be a colossal embarrassment.
Yeah, and I want to switch gears and I want to get to spring training and get away from the World Baseball Classic because you are locked in more than we are on this show, right? We take it sort of day by day. We don't do the look aheads a lot. So much is happening. And one of the biggest stories to come out of spring training so far is Hunter Greene. Hunter Greene was this guy, the Reds looked upon him as being their ace, and he pitched like an ace, but it's always been health with him. And when you're a team like the Reds and you have, all your eggs in this basket and you're paying this guy the money to try and be the guy, and then he gets hurt last year, and now once again it's the same situation where he's got an elbow injury and it looks like he's done until July. What is the sense that you're getting around Reds camp and what's happening with the Reds? And it for me, it's like I always want to fight for the little guy, right? And the Reds always felt like one of those teams that like they need the stars to align for them to be any sort of team. Where's your head at with that?
It's an absolutely crushing injury. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Hunter Greene, when you look just old school baseball, what do we love? We love a good old fastball, good old four-seamer. Hunter Greene's four-seamer is 98, 99. When he's rolling, forget about it. And he's had a few seasons now going into this year in which he has been tantalizing in terms of his promise and potential. Hunter Greene on paper should be one of the best starting pitchers in baseball, but the problem has been health. He has been unable to stay healthy for a sustained amount of time, and that was the biggest quandary for this Reds team. A year ago, they went 83-79. They made the playoffs. Terry Francona's first season as manager. Tito, one of my favorite guys in the game, unbelievable manager. We obviously know about his pedigree and success with the Boston Red Sox and with the Cleveland then Indians, now Guardians. So Tito comes to Cincinnati. They lure him out of retirement. He's had like 18 surgeries. I'm Tito, why are you still managing? It's all I love to do is what I want to do. Okay, fine. And Cincinnati, they had that success. Now, 83-79. They weren't exactly world beaters, but yes, they made the playoffs, quickly got dusted against the LA Dodgers. If the Mets had not had that horrific collapse, the Mets should have been that third seed. But regardless, if you're the Cincinnati Reds, you go, hey, we were a playoff team. Let's build off of that. To me, what's ironic is that in Great American Ballpark, which is a park known for a ton of offense, their offense really didn't step up last year. They had trouble at times scoring runs. And Ellie De La Cruz is one of the more fascinating enigmas in all of sports. Again, much like a Hunter Greene, he has tantalizing potential and speed and a guy that can do so many great things for you. But Ellie strikes out too much and he makes too many errors. But he does have unbelievable range and gets a lot of balls. Most shortstops would not. And he does have power and had a great first half. He slowed down considerably in the second half, but he should be a perennial all-star for years to come. Now, they need more offense. They'll go out and sign Eugenio Suarez. Suarez is a guy who can bang. Last year was having a phenomenal year hitting the ball, then went to Seattle where home runs go to die, struggled mightily at T-Mobile Field the rest of the way, and thankfully bid Seattle good riddance. Unlike Josh Naylor, who got dealt there, had a great time, re-signed with the Mariners, Suarez goes back to the Reds where he was there previously. So my outlook for Cincinnati coming into this year was you're probably a wild card, and you're probably looking at third in the Central. The Cubs went and signed Alex Bregman, 5 years, $175 million. He's a difference maker. They traded for Edward Cabrera. That bolsters their starting pitching. I think Cade Horton's a potential ace. They're going to get Justin Steele back at some point. Imanaga is a pretty good number 3. And then the Brewers, who everybody disrespects, they won 97 games a year ago. Like Milwaukee's not going anywhere. Now, true, they traded Freddie Peralta to the Mets. He's their ace, but they've done that before. They traded Corbin Burns to Baltimore and still were able to have success. So I think prior to the Hunter Greene injury, the Reds were looking at, hey, best case, we're third in this division, and we're going to have to be an 85-win team and get a wild card. Now the Hunter Greene injury, absolutely devastating. Like him and Andrew Abbott together were a formidable 1-2 punch for a Reds team, which has very good pitching. Nick Lodolo in the mix as well. Now with Greene done till July, COCA, the Reds, I don't want to say the season's already over before it began, but I cannot see them being a playoff team without Hunter Greene.
And I want to talk about Philadelphia here, because there are two different things happening in Philly with two different teams. And I know you're an Eagles guy, and I'll get to the Eagles in a second, but with the Phillies, it seems as though they have sort of that same storyline going on with the Eagles, where you have this ownership group and you have this disconnect between what the players want and what's going on with the owners. So they just got rid of Castellanos, but Bryce Harper still has that situation where he was called out by Dombrowski, and he still holds that resentment. They lose Ronher Suarez. He goes up to Boston. They sign Jesus Luzardo to a long-term deal the other day. Yeah. Do you see those sort of parallels between what's happening with the Phillies and what's happening with the Eagles? The only thing the Phillies don't have is that recent ring that the Eagles have. but it looks like there's a lot of disconnect and a lot of drama going on off the field with both of those teams right now. And they're both supposed to be contenders because as a Mets fan, I'm still not fully in belief that the Mets are better than what the Phillies are just because of the starting pitching situation. Because I think that the Phillies rotation is really, really good. Despite the fact that they lost Ronher Suarez, I still think that they have the best rotation in the NL East. And I still think that, Schwarber and Harper, that they can lead a team, to the playoffs and to a championship. And then on the Eagles side of things, you've got the Jalen Hurts situation with A.J. Brown. What's going on there? Is that going to be, do you want A.J. Brown to be shipped out? Do you think that they can coexist there? Nick Sirianni has used so many different offense coordinators. I think they're on to their 6th offense coordinator. So where's your head at in the Philadelphia space right now?
I love it. Lot to chew on. First off, as I'm flying to go to Vancouver for my side hustle gig, Sens Canucks on Amazon Prime Canada. Guy just staring at me in line there. I don't have TSA pre. I'm a very boring man. I just go to general checkout. I'm like, no problem. Just kind of gives me that look. And he goes, how are my Mets going to do this year? And I go, well, I don't know if they're better, but they're more interesting. He said, meaning? I said, you had this, like your 4 longest tenured guys are gone. So it's a radically different team. Alonso's gone, Nimmo's gone, McNeil's gone, Diaz is gone. And those guys are fan favorites. So I said, I don't know if you're better because you lost a lot of veteran talent. Having said that, with $340 million, you were 83 wins and you had a slow, long decline into irrelevance and missing the playoffs. So why not switch it up? So I get David Stern's going, well, no, we paid these guys a ton of money and didn't make the playoffs. I might as well switch it up. And I think Peralta's an absolute difference maker. Fastball Freddy, as they call him, one of the best starters in baseball. And Bo Bichette's going to hit. I don't know how well he's going to play third base. Third base used to be just about reaction time, but Bo doesn't have a very strong arm, so I worry about his arm strength, whether or not that will last. Simeon at second base is terrific defensively, but it hasn't hit the last couple of years, despite the fact he won a Silver Slugger back in 2023. And Jorge Polanco at first base, another guy playing out of position, trying to learn something different. Mets going to have a lot of problems at infield defense. Maybe they can hit. And one thing about Bo, again, if it wasn't for Aaron Judge, he would have been a batting champion. So good luck to your Metsies. Meantime, for the Phillies, Ranger Suarez, unbelievable. Like, that guy had a great year. He goes to the Red Sox. Boston now has enviable starting pitching depth. Suarez slots in now second behind Chris Sale. But for Philadelphia, Christopher Sanchez is a top 5 pitcher in the National League. People don't realize how special he was a season ago. Now, Zach Wheeler was in line for a Cy Young. He's never won, perennially the bridesmaid, never the bride. Hopefully he comes back healthy at some point for Philadelphia, and that, again, forms a formidable 1-2 punch. Andrew Painter was their top prospect and looked great. Then he had Tommy John. Last year, 5.4 ERA in AAA, not the same pitcher. They really need a young guy like that to help them, to bolster them. And this is where I make the comp that you were making to the Phillies and the Eagles. They need an infusion of some youth and some movement, because the Phillies veteran core, which you mentioned, of Harper and Schwarber, and those guys are all very talented, but they need some young guys now to kind of push them. Like, they need their Alec Bohms and their Brandon Marshes and these other players to kind of step up and give them a rise. And one guy that could be really important is Justin Crawford, the son of Carl Crawford. They're going to do everything they can to get that guy in the lineup. He's got speed, just like his dad. Speed, exciting, runs the bases. I'm like, all right, if you get Justin Crawford and Andrew Painter now pitching as a number 4, as a number 5, then all of a sudden the Phillies get a couple of youthful players that will help right now. It feels like an aging core. Castellanos and Rob Thompson, not on the same page. Love Topper, by the way. Great manager, fellow Canadian, Sarnia, Ontario. He's doing all he can with that team, and he kind of just lets them ride. He knows they have a lot of crazy personalities. Trey Turner, you wake him in a bet, he's going to hit 300. Philadelphia, there's a reason why they had 96 wins a season ago. For me, they're still the favorite in the NL East, even with losing Suarez. And I do think Duran's really important as their closer. Acquired him last season. They've had a problem in terms of that bridge to get to him, but he is a legit closer, which has the problem for Dave Dombrowski's teams and having a good bullpen. So Philadelphia, to me, is that team to be in the NL East. But you're right about that window, because at least for the Eagles, they can say, well, we won. I mean, we have a Super Bowl. That should earn you 2 or 3 years of equity in most markets. In Philadelphia, it doesn't. The next year, it's, what have you done for me lately? And all the unrest and the hand-wringing, and we'll get the Eagles in just a second. But for the Phillies, still haven't won. The last World Series you won was 2008, and prior to that was 1980, and that's been it. So this is a fan base which has been starved for sustained success. The Phillies are perennially in the playoffs, and then unfortunately don't step up big time. We saw that a year ago. How about 2 years ago? You're up 3-2 going back to the bank. You had the games at home, and you lost, and you gagged it. So right now, the label on this Phillies team is underachiever, unable to step up and do the big thing, which is win that World Series. I'm thrilled they re-signed Schwarber. I think he's absolutely critical. I don't think it's fair to blame Castellanos for everything, but was there a disconnect with him in front office? Absolutely. And Nick has now gone on. By the way, he's a highly motivated player. He can now go with the Padres, and he's playing for the minimum. They're giving him, $17 million to not play baseball. The Phillies are. So he could go out there at the major league minimum and be an effective player for A.J. Preller of the Padres. Who knows? But for Philadelphia, team to beat right now, but they've got pressure and expectations. And to your point on Bryce, which I think is fascinating, here's what Dombrowski did. So Scott Boras and company are saying, hey, we wouldn't mind a contract extension. And Dombrowski's going, what? I gave you 10 years, $300 million. It's like, well, yeah, but Bryce has outplayed his deal. So instead, I think they got tired of that squawking. And Bryce, by his very high standards, had an offseason for himself last year. OPS plus from around 130. Normally it's around 150. So Dombrowski realizes when you've got a guy who still has 6 more years under contract, how can you motivate a player like that? Well, sometimes you use the media. And it was a very calculating move by Dave Dombrowski. He's been around the block. He's won World Series, the Marlins. He's got the Tigers to the World Series. He's had great success, the Boston Red Sox. Like Dave Dombrowski is a silver fox. He knows what he's doing. So he said, I'm going to use the media to get the attention of Bryce Harper and said, he did not have an elite season. Whether or not he can still be elite, that's up to Bryce. So I don't mind Dave Dombrowski doing that to kind of poke the bear and see if he can get a reaction. I also don't mind Bryce Harper's reaction, which when he went to camp was like, no, we haven't spoken. No, I wasn't thrilled about it. I've been completely committed to this organization. I've done everything they've asked of me. I played right field. I adjusted to first base. I've hit. I answered the media requests. I moved the fans. And I thought Bryce's best point was this. He goes, when I first signed here, I was told that if anything happens, it stays in-house, stays private. You and Samson have a spat. It's between COCA and Samson. We're not going to take this on Nothing Personal live on YouTube and let the airwaves know. So I get from Bryce's perspective, like, hey, Dave, you got an issue with me. You didn't like my production, or you don't think I'm the player I once was, and you're trying to motivate me. Fine. Let's have that private conversation. When you do it publicly, now you're hurting my feelings. Now you're going to piss me off, and I don't need you to motivate me. But Dombrowski, of course, very sly and calculating, was like, that's exactly what I was doing. I'm using the media to fire you up.
Yeah, the pressure is on, right? Because the Dodgers are just so good on paper. They're the back-to-back World Series champions, and now you're looking for any other team who can compete with that, right? Yeah. And you start looking around and you say, can the Padres do it? Maybe, but they haven't been able to do it, in their history. Are the Mets going to be able to do it? You talked about that. The Cubs, are the Cubs good enough to compete with the Dodgers? Probably not. Can the Brewers be that team that steps up? And they're one of those teams where, it's a lot of those everything has to go right situation. Even though they've been good for the past couple of years, it's been at the detriment of the Cubs. So you look around and you're like, who else can contend in a series going up against the Dodgers? And if you're a Phillies fan, you have to believe that, like, hey, any series we can take on the Dodgers, but not if we're going into a season where we still have our star player fighting with our front office publicly like they're doing. We have players admitting to drinking beers, during games when they've been removed from the games. We let one of our starting pitchers leave for Boston last year. So it's just like one of those situations where if you're a Phillies fan, you're like, hey, we need to get our act together. We need to get out on the field. We need to win these games because I still believe that we can contend with the Dodgers in the NL.
Yeah, I think right now that is a fair statement that Philadelphia might be the best team to challenge the Dodgers, but I also feel like that window is closing a little bit. Like, ultimately, the Bryce Harper criticism is not unfounded. Like, he did not have as strong a season as he had in the past. He's a 2-time MVP, but by his high standards, and maybe he was a little bit hurt, he wasn't as strong as he's been in the past. So I get Dombrowski's focus there. And as I said, Zach Wheeler's a guy coming off a major injury who's now in his mid-30s. Like, Zach Wheeler's got 2 more years of being an ace, and then he could be retiring and say, okay, I'm taking this one to the house. So you're right. For the Padres, they're still a 90-win team to me, but didn't spend the way they did in the past. Their starting pitching after their top 3 gets a little bit shaky. I love Michael King re-signing a 3-year, $75 million deal. He's got opt-outs after the first 2 years, but Yu Darvish is done for the year. So you're still expecting Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis to carry that offense. The Giants, they were 500 last year, a full season of Rafael Devers. Maybe they can be better, but everybody knows they're all playing for second place in the West. Like, the Dodgers did not run the table in the regular season. They had, by their standards, a good regular season, not great. Just wait to the playoffs, and that starting pitching is just ridiculous. Yamamoto is worth every dollar that we've seen. You got Blake Snell, 2-time Cy Young Award winner, and obviously Ohtani pitching It's a joke what they're able to do. Glasnow's never going to throw more than 150 innings. Doesn't matter because they just need him come playoff time. Milwaukee last year had the most wins in the regular season. There wasn't one person who said to themselves, oh, yeah, the Brewers are going to be that team to win the World Series. And what happened? They weren't able to come through. I think the Phillies are probably the best challenger to the Dodgers, the National League. I do think the Cubs are intriguing, though. The Cubs, to me, could make some waves and make things special. I do want to talk about the Eagles. So you mentioned my beloved Philadelphia team. This is what happens. As soon as free agency comes, you go, oh, my God, we're just getting boat raced. You win the Super Bowl the next season. You have a good but not great year. We won the division, but of course, offense was just incredibly, maddeningly inconsistent all year long. That defense was Super Bowl caliber. Vic Fangio, unbelievable defensive coordinator. You give him the talent, he'll make it work. From week 10 on, the Eagles allowed the fewest points in football. That's how good this defense was. But offensively, they just never could get on the same page. And that playoff game was a microcosm of their entire season against the 49ers. They would have a good first half and then a terrible second half, and vice versa. They could never string together consecutive drives. And a big part of it to me was the offensive line. If you don't have a strong offensive line the way they did a season ago, that's going to be an issue. Lane Johnson being out was a massive loss for them. He's one of the best right tackles in football. To me, one of the biggest questions for this year was, is Lane Johnson going to come back? Once he announced, yep, I'm coming back for one more season, I'm like, all right, deep breath, great news. Saquon Barkley may not be a 2,000-yard rusher, but he'll be at least 1,200 yards if Lane Johnson's there. But when it comes to free agency, COCA, all these big names gone. Jalen Phillips was such a difference maker for them on defense. 4 years, $120 million the Panthers, just like that. Jahan Dotson, okay, number 3 receiver, gone. Nakobe Dean, huge fan of, signing with the Raiders. Reed Blankenship, great, signs with the Texans. So you're talking about a starting linebacker, 2 linebackers who were massive for them in Phillips and Dean. Blankenship is starting safety, gone. And most fans would go, oh yeah, but who is the real question is what's happened with A.J. Brown? So it feels like to me more than likely that he'll trade him before June 1st because that's that post-June 1st designation after the draft to make the cap hit less damaging. But everything I'm reading is that he's trying to get creative in getting teams to kind of bite on this and convincing teams to half the deal now, half of it later. That way he can trade Brown before the draft and still manage the cap hit. So it's interesting when it comes to Howie Roseman, the cap. Those are machinations which I don't necessarily understand or appreciate. But the bottom line is this. If you ask me as an Eagles fan, do you want to trade A.J. Brown? My first answer is no. I'm like, this guy, even in a tumultuous season, was a 1,000-yard receiver. Like him and Devontae Smith, both 1,000-yard receivers. Like to me, I'm like, you don't just get talent like that. But if I think deeper about it and I go, this guy's a diva. He's difficult. He complains. He's a malcontent. He never seemed happy. He's reading books on the sidelines. Every time there's a bat, okay, fine. Like sometimes you do have to sacrifice talent for the greater good. So I'm kind of at peace with it either way. Like if they keep him, I'm like, yeah, dude, he's A.J. Brown. He's a great player. I don't want to lose a great player. But if they say to themselves, you know what? It's more pain than it's worth. Just deal him. We'll get some picks, get a younger guy, figure it out. We'll go from there. I want to kick it to you now about your Ravens because this Maxx Crosby story, to the max. This guy's an absolute difference maker, total stud. You think you're going to get him, and then what happened? You must be beside yourself.
Yeah, it's just a crazy situation where they traded 2 first-round picks from Maxx Crosby the other day, but this is during the legal tampering period, so nothing is official until, I believe it is Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Everything can become official. So he goes to Baltimore, he does his physical, and then, yesterday afternoon, late afternoon, evening, it comes out from the Raiders side, hey, the Ravens have backed out of this trade. Then you're thinking to yourself, okay, as a Ravens fan, you're saying there is no way that Maxx Crosby has passed his physical. But the problem for me is just how this looks, because now you've traded for Maxx Crosby. He is this game-changing elite edge rusher, and that is what you have always missed as being a Raven fan the past couple of seasons. And then all the players that have now left the team because you brought in Maxx Crosby and your cap situation is different. So you allowed Tyler Linderbaum to leave to go to the Raiders, and he was the number 1 target on, in free agency starting center. We've lost 2 tight ends in Charlie Kohler and Isaiah Likely. Jordan Stout, who's our punter, is gone. Patrick Card is gone. Draymond Jones went to the Patriots, and he was our other edge rusher. And now you're sitting there with egg on your face, and you're saying, as a Ravens fan, what do we do now? Where do we go now? Is the rest of the league going to look at us as being these imbeciles who nobody wants to trade with anymore because this is happening? But then you have to trust what your medical team is, saw. If they believe that Maxx Crosby's knee, and there's something wrong with Maxx Crosby's knee, because the way that they do the pass and failing of a physical is they're doing risk assessment for years later in the rest of his career, right? Is his knee going to hold up in 2 to 3 years? Because they're still going to have to pay him big money because he is signed to a long-term deal, and they're going to try and they would have tried to restructure that deal to get the cap hit down a little bit this year, but he's still signed long-term. But now what do you do and where do you go? So that's why I don't think that the Ravens got cold feet, because Maxx Crosby is an elite edge rusher, and that's the exact position that the Ravens have needed. So saying that they have cold feet, and they got the draft picks back, well, they're still in a situation where, okay, you have the draft picks, but you just lost your free agents. I think the worst of the situation is now, what do other teams do? What happens to other players who just got who got these contract offers, who haven't put pen to paper yet with their teams? Now you have Maxx Crosby going back to the Raiders, where, all reports are that he is going to stay there and he's going to, play out there. There are teams calling that want him. But now what about all these other free agents that have been worked into these calculations and these cap formulas to try and fit under the cap? It's just a terrible situation for all involved. It's terrible for Maxx Crosby, right? Because he puts out this whole statement about how he's thanking the fans and he's, the emotional side of things. And now he's still got to battle back. Now he has to go back to Las Vegas. Now the Ravens have to figure out what they're going to do because they've lost so many players. Are they going to be able to put something together? Are they going to go out and get a Trey Hendrickson, who's 3 years older than Maxx Crosby, and he's coming off injury, and he had his whole contract dispute with the Bengals. It's just ugly, and I'm not here for it.
No, I'm with you, buddy. I love the passion about it because you're right. Crosby is an absolute difference maker. Everyone knows what an elite player is and how transformative he can be. And I find it fascinating with you being a Ravens fan for years. They were that model organization. You go, no matter what, every year you can't count out the Ravens with Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. This is a tandem that everybody can get behind. No matter what, they're going to contend for the division and they're going to contend for a Super Bowl. And now I think it's a fascinating situation with Harbaugh no longer there after a very long tenure. And I don't know, maybe you're a fan of just having some new blood, or you think this is a guy who still should be there? Regardless, with Lamar Jackson there, you're never that far away from theoretically being a contender. And Crosby, again, impact player, like legit star, to have that fall apart like it is. Where are you on Team Harbaugh? Would you wish he still was the head coach? Or are you glad that John's gone?
I was a Harbaugh out guy. It was just too long, right? It was just too long in the same thing where they're giving up these big leads, where they're not getting things done in the postseason, where it always felt as though that he would come up with these excuses, right? It was, how's your relationship going with Lamar Jackson? How's your relationship going with the players? What is happening in the fourth quarters of games? Why is Zach Orr still the defensive coordinator? Why did you guys let Mike McDonald walk out the door? There were just a lot of things that were happening, to the team where I just felt like, hey, you've been there for so long. You had the one Super Bowl early on in your career, but then the rest of your career, it was just result after result after result in the postseason of not being able to get it done. And it felt like it was the best case scenario for both of these teams to get fresh starts.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's nothing wrong with the guy. As you said, it just makes sense to move on. I mean, John Wooden, the great line, which, Epstein would always quote. Theo Epstein mentioned this. He said, after the success I had with the Red Sox and then the success with the Cubs, and now Theo's been working for Major League Baseball, he said, there's a reason why John Wooden used to say after 10 years, you should just move on. Like, your voice starts to get diminished. Other people get tired of hearing it. You don't have the same clout that you have, and you yourself aren't as energized. I'm always just deeply envious of people who say they've been at the same job for 25 years or lived in the same home for 30 years. I mean, it just blows me away. As the longest I've held a job was ESPN, almost 9 years. And that's it. No matter what, I just think in this business, especially the media, you have a job, you move on, you do your best. Your voice gets worn out after a while. People get sick of you. At least for John Harbaugh, now he's reinvigorated by a fresh start with the Giants. And as you said, the Ravens will be potentially as well. I do want to do some Oscar talk here before I hand off the second hour to Jeremy Tache and Nothing Personal as we continue. Again, Adnan working for David Samson today. Having a blast here with COCA. On Sunday, Selection Sunday, Leviturn had thrown this idea up to me and Samson. He was like, hey, how funny would this be? We'll have you guys on talking Oscars and Selection Sunday. And I said, hang on a second. You want me to say, hey, did Mick Cronin get screwed as a 5 seed, and will Sean Penn win his 3rd Oscar? Next. He's like, yeah, that's exactly what I want you to do. So perhaps improbably, perhaps stupidly and foolishly, myself and Samson will be a part of the cast, 11 universe, this Sunday. I think we're going from 5:45 Eastern. I'm not sure how late until 7 o'clock Eastern is when the Oscars start. And Samson and I are such nuts. We love to watch the red carpet. So I think we're going to definitely be on together during the red carpet. And when honestly the Oscars begins, we'll see what can happen. But Coca, this is a grudge match, quite frankly. 2 years ago, we had the Oscars. The Meadowlark hosted it. It was me and David and the great Ben Lyons, my dear friend, who we've hosted the Oscars together twice. We're there at the Academy Awards. In the past, me and Ben have done it twice. This time, we're in Miami doing the Oscars. David beat me on the ballot. Fair and square. He was great. He beat us. Then last year, the Revenge of Verk. I got him. What's going to happen this time around, Coca? Who do you have your money on?
You know, it depends on who. It depends on what you have for Best Picture, right? Whoever you have for Best Picture is whoever I'm going with, because I am full team Sinners, and I don't think that Sinners is going to win. But if you have Sinners there, you know, I am going to root for you because I want Sinners to sweep the awards. Because I watch Sinners and I watch One Battle After Another, and I just don't get the love that One Battle After Another is getting. I think that and you know, I had talked to David about this, and he obviously disagreed with what I had to say. But Sinners took a chance, right? It wasn't like a movie that I felt like I've seen before. It felt like it was something new, and it felt like it was a fresh take on Black culture, on horror films, on vampire movies, on music, on just the things that it did, and it worked so well. Just the way that they had Michael B. Jordan playing the same character twice. The way that they intertwined the music and the stories and the history into a movie that you felt like you were watching for the first time. Where I'm watching One Battle After Another, and it's like, I feel like I've seen this before. I feel like I've seen a movie that's just like this. I don't understand why Sean Penn is getting all this love, right? For being, he played a racist, Homeland Security agent. We've seen characters and things like that before. We haven't seen a movie like Sinners before, and I think that you should be awarded for taking chances and for those chances to work out, as opposed to, I haven't seen Hamnet, I haven't seen Marty Supreme. You know, the one big award that I wanted to ask you about, and I brought it up, is the Sean Penn thing. Why isn't somebody like Jacob Elordi getting more love for supporting actor? When you're looking at the odds, he's last in the odds. I watched that Frankenstein movie, and it was like he gave this emotion, like you were rooting for a monster, right? He turned this monster into this empathetic character and the sympathetic character where you're like, I can relate to what this monster is going through. When you watch Sean Penn, you're like, dude, you could just be playing yourself in this movie.
No, if you're twisted and deranged, you're also cheering for Sean Penn, a monster of a different type, because he's unbelievable. And One Battle After Another, it's going to win Best Picture. I'm telling you right now, it's a lock. It won the PGA, which is the Producers Guild Award. And One Battle After Another, I'm with you on this. I don't think it's Paul Thomas Anderson's best film, despite the fact he's one of my favorite filmmakers. Boogie Nights is better, Magnolia is better, Phantom Thread is better, and one of the best films of the last 25 years, There Will Be Blood, is better. But P.T. Anderson has never won before Best Picture or Best Director, so this is going to be his time. Just like last year we saw with Sean Baker and Honora. Sean Baker for years is a very good independent filmmaker, and then Honora went on an unbelievable run, and Sean Baker rode that crest and wave. So will the same happen this year for P.T. Anderson. They've been just running roughshod over all the award prizes. So unfortunately, my friend, I do think One Battle After Another is going to win Best Picture. To your point, Sinners is not only a great film, but I think it's important where and when you saw it. Me and my buddy John Nadler, my great college friends, we actually was visiting New York. We saw it like opening weekend, the IMAX theater in New York, which is like the theater to see it in. It was an unbelievably immersive experience. Like, this is not something you can watch on Netflix and take a time out once in a while. Like, as you said, they're mixing so many different genres and using basically a genre movie. It's a vampire movie, but mixing social commentary in there, the way that white culture has stolen, raped, appropriated Black music. It was really a powerful film, and I love the Dave Newmall, Buddy Guy, and all the use of the blues and what that music represents. There's some incredible set pieces in there. And most of all, I think what you want with the Oscars is this, some unpredictability. So I'll tell you the locks right now. One Battle After Another is going to win Best Picture. P.T. Anderson, at 55 years of age, is finally going to win Best Director Oscar. I think P.T. Anderson's got a pretty good chance of winning the adapted screenplay. That's 3 Oscars for Paul Thomas Anderson. And Hamnet, which is one of my favorite films there, which you haven't seen, which I hope you see before the Oscars Sunday, Jessie Buckley gives a captivating performance. It's one of the most emotional performances you'll ever see by an actress. She's going to win Best Actress. So there's your 3 locks: picture, director, actress. Here's where things get interesting, and this dovetails to your point about Michael B. Jordan and Marty Supreme. All along, Leo was thought to be maybe the guy. This will be his second Oscar. One battle after another, is wildly popular, and he's terrific in the movie. But no. Have you seen Marty Supreme? Timothée Chalamet comes out Christmas Day. This movie's unbelievable. This is the movie hitting the zeitgeist. This is a film where A24 took a massive chance. This is an independent film studio. They put $60 to $70 million behind a movie about a Jewish guy in 1950s who wants to be a ping pong champion of the world. What? And the film's made $150 million worldwide, and Chalamet's been everywhere. There he is touting Kylie Jenner. There he is with orange ping pong balls. There he was at the World Baseball Classic. He was in Tokyo. It was unbelievable. My bad buddies there, Drake May and Chalamet, just checking out Tache and the WBC. And it looked like Chalamet was going to win. He gives a great speech at the Golden Globes. We know what a good actor he is. He was excellent in the Bob Dylan film. I wasn't crazy about the movie, but I thought his performance was excellent. So Chalamet's going to win, right? And then what happens? Well, at the BAFTAs, which is the British Academy Awards, a complete unknown actor wins. Okay, so that upsets the apple cart. Who's the guy I'm rooting for? Ethan Hawke. At 56, his first Best Actor nomination. He's up for a great film called Blue Moon, another collaboration with his longtime friend Richard Linklater. So then we just had the Actor Awards on Netflix on March 1st, formerly known as the Screen Actors Guild Awards, the SAGs. And what happens? Michael B. Jordan wins. And now, my friends, we have a genuine race. Now it is no longer Leonardo DiCaprio winning his second Oscar. It's going to be Chalamet winning his first, or does Sinners and Michael B. Jordan win his first Academy Award for Best Actor? Michael B. Jordan's a terrific actor. You want to talk about Chalamet making risky choices? Look at what Michael B. Jordan's done in his career. How great was he in Fruitvale Station? How good was he in Creed? How good is he playing dual roles, as you mentioned? So I'm looking at goldderby.com, which is one of the foremost prognosticating sites. And right now it is a coin flip for Best Actor. And Chalamet has lost momentum. He was winning everything. He has not won a major award in a month. And Michael B. just won the SAG. And why is that so important? The largest branch of the Academy is actors. The way the nominations work is for cinematography, let's say. Cinematographers vote on who gets nominated for Best Cinematography. But when it comes to the major awards, everybody votes on them. So for Best Picture, everybody's voting, not just producers or directors or actors. And for actors, they're going to support an actorly movie, which is one of the reasons why I was so thrilled Delroy Lindo got nominated. The man's 70 years of age. He finally gets nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Sinners. Now, it's not his best film. I think he's great in the movie, as is the movie itself. But he's been so good in Spike Lee movies like Malcolm X, To Five Bloods. He got robbed of a nomination for that. So that's another one where I'm like, listen, don't count out the ride of momentum for Sinners. There's always one or two upsets. What if Delroy Lindo wins Best Supporting Actor? I don't see it happening. I think Penn's going to win his third Oscar over Stellan Skarsgård, who was the favorite for Sentimental Value, which is a film I know David Sampson's very passionate about, father-daughter story, etc. But I think Penn has got the momentum now to win his third Oscar. And I disagree with you on this. I do think he's one of the best parts of the movie. He's deranged and couldn't be more dissimilar than him. Sean Penn's a huge liberal. He cares so much about others. This guy's a raving lunatic, a right-wing Nazi who loves black women and is harboring this deep secret. For The Walk alone, Sean Penn should win an Oscar. The way his face is horribly disfigured, I did think it was a great performance by him. And if Sean Penn wins, I'd be happy. The other one you should all look for, by the way, is Best Supporting Actress. Tiana Taylor was the favorite for One Battle After Another, but watch out for Amy Madigan. Who didn't love her in Field of Dreams, playing Kevin Costner's wife? She has not been nominated for an Oscar in over 40 years. The Oscars love to give Lifetime Achievement Awards, and Weapons was a real surprise. Weapons is not the kind of movie that normally wins Oscars, but if you saw it, you said, oh, wow. Again, like Sinners, this is a genre movie, a horror movie, but saying more than you would expect, and Madigan's unbelievable. I mean, that was the best Halloween costume going. If you saw people dressed up as Amy Madigan from Weapons, you're like, that's a pretty good Halloween costume. So I think right now, the foremost races that are the most interesting, Best Actor, Chalamet versus Michael B. Jordan. Best Supporting Actor, Sean Penn versus Skarsgård, and maybe Delroy Lindo. And Best Supporting Actress, watch out for Tiana Taylor versus Amy Madigan. The Oscars on Sunday, Conan O'Brien hosting, and of course, Meadowlark Media will have that show. Me and Samson joining forces. I think it's going to be an absolute blast.
All right, thank you so much for joining me. Our time's already up. You've got to run. I've got to go to a break. I've got to do a read, but I really appreciate you helping me out today. Thank you so much, Adnan.
Coca, the time flew by. We didn't even get to discuss the fact that I did a duet with Michael Bublé, one of the great singers of all time. Go to my social media. You're going to repost it for me. Me and Bublé singing together at a Vancouver Canucks game. It was a pleasure, my friend. Hopefully we'll talk soon. Congrats on your award and your success. And good luck to Tache trying to top our first hour here on Nothing Personal.
DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook for live betting, is built for March. The tournament is unexpected. Rewards are guaranteed. DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering the most generous rewards in the market. With DraftKings, the #1 sportsbook for live betting, you're not betting what might happen, you're betting what's happening. New to DraftKings, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code SAMSON. That's code SAMSON to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets instantly. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. Thank you, everybody who listened to that first hour with Adnan Verk. We are trying, and I am hoping that for this second hour that everything works out how it should work. And I have a very special guest because it was a very special night for the Miami Heat. And we have Jeremy Tache joining me now. And I am praying and I am hoping that when I press this button and he comes on, that the volume works. So I am going to try it now, and everybody please tell me if this works. Go.
Test, test, test. 1, 2, 3. Can everyone hear me? I'm very excited to talk about.
I can hear you right now. I can hear you.
Awesome.
I can hear you, which is
Great.
good. Which is good. All right, talk to me.
Good news.
Talk to me. It was the perfect night and the perfect date to have you on here. Bam Adebayo scored 83 points. Historic, the second most in NBA history. Were you at that game?
So, ironically, this is one of the only regular season games that I did not attend. It was my grandfather's 86th birthday yesterday, so we had dinner planned, and I figured Heat Wizards on a Tuesday night, of all times for there to be a birthday, sure, this could be one of them where I don't have to be in attendance. And of course, I missed a game in which Bam Adebayo scored 3 fewer points than the amount of years that my grandfather has been on this planet. It was unbelievable to watch. So I was at dinner at the start of the game, and I get a text that just says, hey, Bam has 14 points in like 5 minutes. I was like, oh man, cool, great start. And then as we walk out of dinner, I'm like, he has how many at the end of the first quarter? So we get home, and I started watching the game from the beginning and skipping through the commercials. Bam Adebayo was sensational last night. And to watch a guy who exemplifies everything you would want in a team leader, a team captain, a pillar of your franchise, because of not just the player that he is and all of the things that he is within what the Heat identify as their culture on the court, but the human being that he is off of the court. It was such a special night. And again, Bam Adebayo, like, he just talked about this because in the previous game, he reached the 10,000 career point mark. And he became just the second player in Miami Heat history to do so, the only other being Dwayne Wade. Now, Dwayne Wade has like 21,000 points with the Heat, but 10,000 points with the Miami Heat for Bam. And what he talked about and why it meant so much to him wasn't just further cementing his legacy as a legend with the Heat, but the fact that when he came into the league, he was brought in to be a defensive guy and maybe a lob threat offensively. Like in his first season, he barely got touches on the offensive end. He was just setting screens. And the idea was offensively, at the very best, if he was at the peak of what he could be offensively, he would be maybe Draymond Green, right? Now he's a guy who, after a really slow start to this season, thanks to the 83 points last night, is averaging 20 points. He's a 20-10 guy. He does it efficiently. And last night's game was such a testament to the goodwill that he's earned with this franchise, because Eric Spoelstra didn't need to keep him out there in the final 6 or so minutes of that game. Ironically, look, everyone thinks like, oh, it was a blowout. It was a 13 or 14 point game with 7 or 8 minutes to go. That's, in modern basketball, a close game. The Heat needed this win. So Bam didn't need to be out there at the start of the fourth quarter. He got to right around 70 points, and that was when it could have been a moment where the Heat were up 20. Spo could have taken him out, started managing minutes, but the respect that Spo has for his captain in Bam, he wanted to see him chase this record. He wanted to get him the opportunity. And the final few minutes of this game were like truly some of the most hilarious basketball you'll ever watch, because the Wizards, excuse me, I caught Samson's bug here of having to cough on mic. But the thing about what the Wizards were doing at the end of the game is, with about 4.5 minutes left in the game, not only do they now start triple teaming Bam for the first time in the game, trying to deny him the ball and not give him an opportunity to score, but they start trying to run out the clock on the offensive end. They're essentially just like dribbling up the ball slowly, trying to give the Heat as few possessions as possible. And so Eric Spoelstra starts saying, well, screw it, I'm going to start fouling them, and sending the Wizards to the line early in the shot clock. And so with a couple of minutes to go, the Heat are forcing possessions. They're up 20. They're fouling. It's like a hack-a-shack scenario on both ends, because as Bam is using the sheer will that he has to break himself open from triple coverage off the ball, he's getting fouled. And to see it all go down the way that it did, for this guy in this moment at home, considering all of the dialogue that has been around him for years, including from the Dan Le Batard show with Stu Gatz, this is a really special moment.
Today's episode is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Well, I am a Coach Cal, Arkansas Coach Cal. I'm a Coach Cal stan. So I root for any player that has played under him. I will root for when they are in the NBA. So I will take this opportunity because the energy isn't where I wanted it to be from you, right? Like, this isn't the Le Batard show. I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to stop you from just going off on all these haters and losers who
Okay,
are talking
all right.
about talking about ethical hoops and the right way
Yeah.
that you should score 83 points in a game, because it's 83 points in an NBA game. He wasn't
you.
going up against high schoolers. All right,
Thank
he
you.
was going up
Thank
against
you.
the Washington Wizards, and maybe you could say, hey, the Washington Wizards would lose to a high school team, whatever, say what you want. But this is 83 points in an NBA game, and I saw it was also the first time two teammates outside of not named Wilt Chamberlain and somebody else have scored 100 points in a basketball game. This is an NBA game. If the Wizards wanted to stop Bam Adebayo from scoring 83 points, they had 4 quarters to do it, and they couldn't get it done.
That's right.
Talk your crap.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Matthew, because this is the space that I'm in going into today. Not only is it about the Bam Adebayo defense in general, right, and the type of spectacular player that he is. Does anybody take into account, does anybody remember what happened with Wilt Chamberlain scoring 100, or for that matter, with Kobe Bryant scoring 81? That game was close through 3 quarters, but Kobe ended up with 13 of 17 of the field goals taken in the fourth quarter as he chased the Wilt record of 78 at the time. So you had Kobe taking all of the shots as that became a blowout and took a ton of free throws, including, I believe, recording the last 7 points of those 81 at the free throw line, not dissimilar to what Bam Adebayo did. So when we talk about ethical hoops, even Kobe Bryant's 81 was done in a similar fashion to what happened with Bam. He could have been out of that game earlier, and they let him chase a record. And when it comes to Wilt Chamberlain, Pablo Torre actually did a fascinating episode, because the Wilt Chamberlain game is not on television. There is no video of this happening. But he went back and he spoke to all sorts of different historians, and they talked about what happened in that game with Wilt. Wilt had 69 points through 3 quarters. 69 points through 3 quarters. Which meant he scored 31 of the 100 in the fourth quarter. And what Pablo came to find out in his episode was that with about 7.5 minutes left in that game, Wilt's team started fouling the other team to get more possessions for Wilt. He also went to the free throw line and shot 32 foul shots, many of which came at the end. A player who was tasked with defending him in that game said that he believed late in the game the refs wanted Wilt to get 100 and started calling fouls on things that certainly were not fouls. Every time Bam was hacked yesterday, it was a genuine foul. He was not getting to the line by foul baiting. He was driving, drawing legitimate contact, and getting to the line. And at the very end, there were a couple plays where, again, using his sheer will, athleticism, and stamina, he's trying to break away from 4 guys just to get the ball, and he's getting fouled off ball. With Wilt Chamberlain, at the end of that game, with under a minute to go, he gets fed. He misses a shot. His team gets the rebound. He misses another shot. His team gets the rebound. And then finally, on the third field goal, while his team is up double digits with under a minute to go, he gets to 100. So when we want to talk about ethical hoops, when we want to talk about the way you get it done, 83 points in an NBA game. And people will say, oh, they were tanking. It was a bad team. Kobe Bryant did it against a team that won 27 games and lost 55 in the Toronto Raptors in the 2005-2006 season. Wilt Chamberlain was doing it against the Knicks. He was a guy who scored 70-plus points 9 times. You're talking about a different era of basketball, and you're talking about a guy in Kobe Bryant who did it in a similar way against a also bad team. And hey, if scoring 83 points was so easy against teams that were tanking, it would be happening all season long. There are teams all over the NBA that are struggling, that are not putting up a defensive effort. The Heat have been scoring 140, 140, 140, 130. They're one of the best offensive teams in the NBA, and they've been particularly great over the last few weeks. Why? Because they decided to run their offense through Bam Adebayo. This guy had a moment for the record books. Nobody's going to remember how it got done. Twitter trolls right now have decided we don't want to give Bam the credit because we don't think he's Kobe. Bam Adebayo is a two-way player, is one of the very best in this league. He has been one of the very best in this league for years. The irony is I think this 83-point game is going to do more for his Defensive Player of the Year candidacy than it actually does for anything else, because people might start finally realizing that this guy is a legitimate superstar in the NBA. And if he wasn't, he wouldn't have scored 83 points. You know who'll tell you that? Kevin Durant after his game in Houston. Giannis Antetokounmpo after his game with Milwaukee. Both of those guys celebrating what it is that Bam did, talking about how difficult it is to do it. Two legends of the game talking about their guy in Bam Adebayo. He is a legend after last night. It goes Wilt, Bam, Kobe. And that list will stand for a very, 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 very long time.
Do you think that the Heat would have been able to turn this season around if it wasn't for Dan getting Erik Spoelstra fired? Like, do you think?
This is another great point.
Do you think that would have been a thing, right? Because I listen. This is not scientific. This is no research done at all. But I believe that the Heat are, I'll say, 9-1 since Dan called for Erik Spoelstra to be fired, and now you have this team playing great. You have them winning games without Tyler Hero playing his best basketball. You have Bam dropping 83 points. You know, maybe you'll have somebody else next game surprise you and score 50, 60, 70. Maybe Bam will come out and have a 100-point game, but he wasn't able to walk. You know, they had to carry him off the hit. He's going to be
a disaster on Thursday.
But do you think this would have happened had Dan not fired Erik Spoelstra?
Cosmically, this show, Dan and Mike in particular, taking strong stances on the Heat often means the opposite thing happens. I hope they don't join and say that this team is going to be a legitimate playoff contender like I've been saying throughout this season, because it'll be the second time. Remember back in 2022-23, I was telling these guys, hey, there's a lot trending here in the second half of the year that makes you believe this team is better than an 8 seed. That even with some of these close losses, the way that three-point shooting is trending, the way Jimmy Butler's been playing, the way Bam Adebayo's been playing, I know the player Jimmy Butler can be in the postseason. I think they could be a problem for Milwaukee. I think Jimmy Butler could have the better series than Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think they can make a run. And these guys laughed at me. They told me, hey, lose on purpose. Lose in the play-in on purpose. Go into the draft. It's not worth it. Tank. They went to the NBA Finals. And now, this season, we've been in a similar spot. The Heat have gone through ups and downs. They've had injuries. Tyler Hero has only played in, I believe, 20 or 21 games at this point. And by the way, when he has played, he's been pretty spectacular. He's the only player in the league averaging over 20 points in a 50-40-90 season right now. The only other 50-40-90 is Luke Kennard. Like, he is having a really productive season when he is out there. But now, he's been doing that. Norman Powell's been hurt. Their other all-star guard. Andrew Wiggins has been out for a few games. They've been dealing with guys going in and out of the lineup, but the constant has been Bam. And realistically, the reason that Dan was hypothesizing and going toward, why hasn't anybody said that maybe Erik Spoelstra should, be talked about in that type of light? Why hasn't anybody called for his job? Really what it is it was deflecting from the fact that Mike Ryan and Jonathan Zaslow have been trading Bam Adebayo. Zaslow started doing it in the middle of this season, in which Bam is now a guy who just scored 83 points and has led them to 6 straight victories. But Mike, for years and years and years, and this guy is going to go down as one of the 5, he might already be one of the 5 greatest players in franchise history, which is saying a lot considering who has been in this franchise. You have Dwayne Wade, you have LeBron James, you have Shaq, you have Chris Bosh, you have Alonzo Mourning, you have Jimmy Butler, you have Tim Hardaway, all these guys. But given what Bam has already done in terms of the full length of the career, the time he's been here, the multiple finals appearances, the anchoring this team's defense through an entire era, growing into being the captain, learning from Dwayne Wade and Udonis Haslem. And speaking of those guys, that timing was similar. Because as Dan and Mike tried to take down Spo and Bam and the rest of this Heat franchise, Dwayne Wade challenged Bam Adebayo. Udonis Haslem challenged Bam Adebayo. Because Bam, after a loss against Milwaukee, they lost back-to-back games in that week where it was a struggle. And 2 games that they hoped to win at home. 2 games that really had me fired up, where I came in here after a week and I said, hey, don't let the Heat win 2 this week because I'm gonna be totally back on my BS. And they lost both of those games. And it was really disappointing. And Bam said, I'm sick of being a play-in team. We're better than that. We're better than a play-in team. I know we're better than a play-in team. We need to lock in. It's frustrating. And Dwayne Wade questioned him through text and then revealed it before the Heat played the Houston Rockets in a game on Prime, an afternoon game in Houston, and said, I told Bam, are you better than a play-in team? Like, are you? Because that's what you've been for years. Are you better than that? I'm not so sure that you are. And Bam consulted with D. Wade, and he consulted with Udonis Haslem, because those are the pillars of this franchise. Those three guys, like them and Alonzo Mourning, those four are not the Mount Rushmore of the best players in franchise history, but they're the Mount Rushmore of what makes up Heat culture. And he consulted with those two guys. And since then, the Heat are 6-0 with wins at Charlotte, the team that was playing the best basketball in the NBA, dominating the Pistons at home, and then Bam coming out and scoring 83 points last night. He has been absolutely spectacular since January, and since the All-Star break, there hasn't been a better player in basketball. There hasn't been maybe a better team in basketball in terms of net rating. They were, since February 1st going into yesterday, they were just behind the Spurs and the Celtics in net rating. That was it. They were third in the league since February 1st. It's the middle of March. That's a strong sample size. And you're looking at a team now in the Miami Heat. They're tied for as many games back as the Toronto Raptors for the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. They are the 6 right now. There's only a game or two difference between that and 10. There's a lot that can happen over the next couple of weeks. And after a game like that one, where Bam is exerting literally all of the energy that he has in his body to not only win a game, but to go score 83 points, they could show up tomorrow night at home against the Bucks with Giannis looking at a matchup with Bam and going, oh, finally, a night where Bam's going to be tired. Because Bam's been the only guy in the world that one-on-one can kind of slow down Giannis Antetokounmpo over the last few years. But you're looking at a team that is going to go into tomorrow night, bringing Tyler Hero back into the fold because he didn't play last night. We're looking at when Andrew Wiggins and Norman Powell are going to come back. This is a team that's going to go into that game with an opportunity to extend it to 7 straight, to potentially create separation, to get into the 5 seed. And now all of a sudden you start looking at Cleveland and New York, and you say, hey, it's 4 games from those guys. And I know that is certainly getting ahead of yourself if you're the Miami Heat. They really, truly are taking this one game at a time. There's nobody better at that than Eric Spoelstra at getting his team ready for individual games. There's nobody better than Bam Adebayo as a captain to go, hey, watch my example. For that matter, the way that Kelce Ware has improved over the course of the season is a testament to the two of them. I know everybody was clowning them for the way that they handled Kelce Ware throughout the season. Hey, let the rookie, take his lumps. Put him out there. Let him struggle. This season's a lost season anyway. What does it matter? But the way that they've handled Kelce from a leadership standpoint, from a basketball standpoint, the way that they challenge him in practice, so much of the growth for these players in the NBA in particular happens at practice. 95% of it. 5% of it happens in the game. So much of what happens behind the scenes. And from a mental standpoint, they have been able to get Kelce Ware to a space where now he and Bam can play on the floor at the same time. Bam can roam around as a power forward as opposed to a center, and they don't struggle defensively. There are so many new opportunities for this team, and the reason why is Bam Adebayo and Dan Le Batard for firing Eric Spoelstra. So that's a big benefit. When Dan Le Batard fires a coach, when Dan Le Batard says, hey, I don't think this thing is going well, or he hitches his wagon to another team and says, hey, the LA Rams are the best team in football. Well, we see what ended up happening.
All right, so I want to play a little game with you, and it's not really a fun game, and it's not really anything that I have bells and whistles for, but I feel like this is the perfect opportunity, and you're the perfect person to talk about. It's called Turning Heel, and the way that this works is I'm going to talk about 3 different guys in 3 different sports. Well, actually, one of them is not even in a sport, unless you want to call Marty Supreme a ping pong champion.
It's a sport.
And Timothée Chalamet. And it's Timothée Chalamet. We've got Luka Doncic. We're not talking about anything that's going on off the court with Luka. I'm talking strictly on the court things with him. And then the last one is Travis Kelce. And I'll start with Timothée, whatever you want to talk about.
Timothée Chalamet.
You are a man of the arts. As I've seen on the Le Batard show, you are the go-to guy when it comes to musicals, when it comes to plays, when it comes to all things that that truly matter to the art world. And Timothée Chalamet was the guy. He had this press run like we've never seen before. He was going from show to show, podcast to podcast, doing everything right to try and win an Oscar. And he's up for the best actor. And I just had talked to Adnan previously in the other hour about his battle with Michael B. Jordan for best actor. But what he did in his sit down with Matthew McConaughey was he came out and he said, and I quote, "I don't want to be working in ballet or opera or, things where it's like, hey, keep this thing alive, even though it's like no one cares about this anymore." Then he followed that up quickly and said, "Listen, all respect to ballet and opera. I know I'm going to catch something for this, but speak to me a little bit about his comments. Do you feel as though this is a situation where his star was rising so quickly that this is just people trying to find something to try and tear him down ahead of the Oscars? Or do you think there's something to what he's trying to say? Like, hey, being a movie actor is different. This is different with the movie theater situation than it is with what's happening with ballet and opera.
I think, not to be a fence sitter, but I think it's a little of column A, a little of column B. Let's start here. Timothée Chalamet, that press run is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. If anyone watching this has not watched the full 20-minute marketing Zoom sort of parody that he did in character as Marty Supreme, it's one of the greatest press junkets. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. It's one of the greatest marketing moves I've ever seen for a movie. It was laugh out loud funny, and it was a fake recorded Zoom call. And the scripting of it, the acting within it of everybody who played a bit part in it was incredible. But his star has risen in a way that I think he's capable of handling, therefore, but also there's this funny dynamic where basically from the moment he accepted, and I can't remember if it was the SAG Awards or I think it was the SAG Awards at the time last year, where he gave the whole speech about, I don't just want to be one of the great actors. I want to be one of the greats. I want to be Michael Jordan. I want to be Michael Phelps. I want to be Viola Davis. And that really started this ultra competitive character that led to the Marty Supreme press run, that led to the Marty Supreme movie. And right from the jump, some people, it rubbed them the wrong way. Most people absolutely loved it. And yet, I do think that in some ways, Chalamet has been a little overexposed. He's been out there talking nonstop. You never see movie stars of that. When do you see Leonardo DiCaprio sitting on a podcast with LeBron James and Steve Nash breaking down basketball, like telling stories like that? He has been everywhere. And in some ways, I think he's also just kind of like using this star to get to have some of the conversations he always wished he could have as a young kid growing up in Brooklyn. He was a guy who went and waited outside of a Broadway show because Landry Fields was on the New York Knicks at the time and was at the show, and he was waiting to get to see him and take a picture with him and get his autograph. Like, that's the type of sports fan that he is. So to have that type of exposure, I do think, and this is a part that's also interesting, some of the dialogue around Chalamet started to shift when he was so public in his love for his girlfriend, Kylie Jenner. And I think people within the elite Hollywood circles that consider themselves, ironically, the sort of better than you attitude that's now being projected onto Timothée Chalamet because of what he said, and I'll get to that part of it in just a second. I think some of that has become a bit of a thing around him, which is like, oh, is he just a bro who wants to be dating a Kardashian, and he's this and he's that, and the way he speaks? Because he came to fame through Call Me By Your Name, through Little Women, through these very artistic movies, through Lady Bird, with these performances that were so special. And I think people watching him do this run where he's sort of been a cocky frat bro in some ways, and he's dating Kylie Jenner and so deeply in love with her in a way that is actually very, very cool to me. Like, I think the way that he is so publicly in love is admirable. But then you get to this individual moment, and it seemed as though what he was trying to say was like, I don't want to be one of the people trying to like carry the movie industry. I don't want to have to be in a position where movies are dying, where the medium is looked at differently than it was before, which there's no denying that the ballet or the symphony or, what I forget what else he meant, the opera, they're all looked at differently than they were in the 1800s or early 1900s or even the late 1900s. Like, as time has gone on, those mediums are looked at differently than they once were. When he uses the term like dying, it insinuates that he believes those things are not worth the same thing as acting as the movies. And of course, from the PR perspective, they had him come out and immediately say like, no, I used to go to the ballet all the time as a kid with my sister and my mom, and I love it, and it wasn't any disrespect. And I believe that. I do. I also believe that was a quick PR decision to make sure that he didn't stick his foot in his mouth so bad that the Oscar went the other direction. But this was a really fascinating case of like, it's part of why so many celebrities keep themselves under wraps, except for the coordinated press tours where they're going on to an interview that's highly edited, that's 12 minutes where they're playing with puppies, right? Like, you really don't want to put your foot in your mouth, and everybody gets scrutinized in a way that is different these days because of the internet than anything else. It actually ties in perfectly with the Bam Adebayo stuff, right? Like, not only is Bam, as a guy who's a pillar of a franchise, over criticized because he's not XYZ that people want him to be, but even last night, he breaks Kobe Bryant's scoring record, and there's 25% of basketball fans, maybe that's a high number, but a whole bunch of people going, unethical hoops. It's not done the right way. And it's like, guys, you're witnessing one of the greats. Enjoy that. And I think Chalamet is the movie star of this generation. Like, he is one of the last remaining, like, true movie stars. Michael B. Jordan is one of those as well, but he's got a few years on Chalamet. And of that run of guys, like, maybe Austin Butler ends up cementing himself in that, which is so funny as a guy who watched him on Zoe 101. But like, Timothée Chalamet is one of the greats, and I think he's put himself out there so much and almost overexposed himself to where there was bound to be a moment where he's being jocular with somebody and says, quote unquote, the wrong thing. It's just, it'd be so funny if that's what ultimately cost him, his Oscar, right? It's just funny because I think he could become a basketball podcaster and win his second Golden Globe through that.
The next guy on this list that I want to talk about is Travis Kelce, and I am of the belief that Travis Kelce is the fakest good guy, fakest nice guy that there is in sports. I don't believe that he is this person that is just so lovey-dovey, I'm so sweet, look how funny I am on my podcast with my brother. Like, I think that is just what he wants to be portrayed as, and he's talking about why he's coming back to play. And he brings up Taylor Swift and My Fiance, and it's so motivating to see that she's still chasing what she's chasing, and she's doing this and she's doing that, and that's what motivates me to come back and do what I love to do. I think that Taylor Swift is the opposite of what you just said with Timothée Chalamet, where she isn't a person where you are seeing who she truly is by going on all these PR tours and conforming to who she's with, right? Where Timothée Chalamet is sitting down with LeBron and Steve Nash, where he's trying to be the cool guy, right? He's trying to be, maybe that's who he truly is. Or he's sitting down with Carmelo and talking about the Knicks with them, or he's sitting down with Matthew McConaughey and they're just BSing. I think that is the reverse of what the good PR is, that is the Taylor Swift and is the Travis Kelce, because Taylor Swift's music is all about, loving the bad boy stuff, right? And now you're going to try and sit here and tell me that Travis Kelce is that guy, that he's the good guy. As a Ravens fan, there was that situation with Justin Tucker where he tosses his helmet before the game starts and he's laughing in his face. Like, you see the competitor that he is on the field and who he was in his career. I'm just not buying it. And that's what, for me, I think he is this ultimate heel, because I don't believe who he is when he's on New Heights or when he's talking about, his relationship with Taylor Swift.
I find this first of all, nice strong take.
Thank you.
It's a strong take. It's one that will get you in a lot of trouble with Swiftie Twitter if you clip it, which would be something I would advise, because the engagement will be spectacular. But I do think that there's an interesting element here, right? Like, Travis has definitely evolved in his public persona, I would say, since the beginning of his career. Like, he had a reality dating show. Within that, there was, kind of that bad boy, devil may care attitude. But I do think that we saw that start to shift over the span of the last, say, 5 to 7 years, right? Like, he seems to be just this, like, big golden retriever, like the textbook, like, golden retriever boyfriend, right? Like, and I do think in playing into what you're talking about, like, when Taylor Swift posted about their engagement, I believe she posted something akin to, your English teacher and, PE coach just got engaged or something. And it's like, you have a specific thing that you're trying to portray. There is no greater marketing wing in maybe the United States than the Taylor Swift marketing wing. Her team does an incredible job of positioning her in one way or another. Let me say, first and foremost, like, I need to put this part out here. I was and kind of remain in some respects, because I love certain albums. Like, I was a big time, like, Taylor Swift is one of the greats, truly. And by the way, she is, period. Like, she is one of the great artists ever in American music history. She's an incredible songwriter. My disappointment has been these last few albums have felt mailed in, and particularly Life of Showgirl, which was this album about, like, falling in love with Travis Kelce. The lyrics felt lazy, and that's the irony in what Travis is talking about, and Taylor, like, pursuing this part of her life, is it's like, no, it kind of feels like these last few albums were just like, let me put every song that I wrote out there, and let me release 8,000. Like, it feels like every single day that I go on Spotify, there's a new remix of Taylor Swift's single so that she can continue to dominate the charts. And that frustrates me. Like, she takes advantage of her fans and their obsessiveness, and bilks them for every last dollar that they have by releasing 4 different CD versions that are only, of 4 different CD versions of The Life of a Showgirl that are only available at Target, and each one of them has 2 different voice memo demo recordings of her in her bedroom doing, and it's like, the most obsessive fans are going to go buy all of those things. And so I don't love the way that this already billionaire continues to sort of take advantage financially of her fan base, which is just full of either young women or, women in their 30s now. And obviously, like, a huge male fan base, myself included, but the most dedicated of fans probably predominantly being women who've grown up with her. And so there's this funny dynamic where you're saying you feel like Travis Kelce is a bit fake. And I don't know that, I haven't really thought about it or seen it until now. I've viewed him as this sort of just big, lovable, goofy, kind of like, hey, man, I don't really get half of your lyrics that are referencing poetry, but I'm sweet, and she's in the space where she wants this sweet guy, and maybe that is what he is. But when I piece together, I'll do a little, like, Windhorse, like, now why would that be? Because, as you say, you get this feeling that Kelce's fake. And I'm sitting here saying, like, well, I get this feeling that the marketing wing for Taylor Swift is this particular thing. He's not putting out any statements right now, especially referencing her name, that are not done specifically through her team. So if he's deciding to come back, they're going to position that as we are in this and motivated together. But this is the last part that I'll have to add because I'm fully buying it on the other end with what happened last night with Bam Adebayo and A'ja Wilson, because the two of them walked into the press conference together after Bam Adebayo's
that was weird.
Game.
That was weird. That was
awesome.
That was unnecessary.
So A'ja
she didn't need to be there. She is not part of the team.
Didn't need to.
People get upset when they have little kids who are there and they run up to the mic and they're screaming something when their dad's there. I don't care who it is. You don't need your girlfriend to be on the podium with you after the game. You could have waited till after the game and put out a little social media post. You could have done a little scrum outside the locker room. You could have done a ton of things. I don't think in that moment, as historic as it was, for them to have her up there with him.
I'll find out
doing that.
I'll find out when I'm there tomorrow how that came to be, and I will text you, and you could bring it to the show on Friday. I'll find out, was it Bam who wanted her there with him? Was it, the PR staff that suggested it? How did that come to be? But I will say, on that podium stage, you did have now the active player with the most points scored ever in the NBA and the active player with the most points scored in the WNBA. So it is a level of synchronicity that if A'ja was just some WNBA player, maybe it wouldn't happen. And by the way, A'ja is at every Heat game. This is not a scenario where she flew in. She was all pissed off because she had been gone for about a week and actually missed the previous game where he got to the 10,000 point record. And so she had been giving him a hard time about I'm so mad that I missed that. I can't believe you got there while I wasn't here. I wanted to celebrate you. And they talked about how after he was like, well, I think getting 83 in front of her the next game that she was back was cool. But she's there. I see her at every game I have done this season, she has been there. So she's one of his number one advocates, and they trained together. So it was a very, to me, a cool moment, but I can also understand the cynicism of can't you do something after? Can't you do something on social? Can't you, just post tributes to each other? For me, I found it to be a really cool moment, but I get the cynicism behind it. But all that being said, I do truly believe deeply in their love and what it is that they're presenting because I know the person Bam Adebayo is.
So the last guy I wanted to talk about is Luka Doncic. And Luka is one of those guys that you want to root for him because he's so good and he doesn't look like other NBA players look, right? Everybody talks about him being a little overweight. It's the Nikola Jokic thing where they're just getting things done, but they look like regular people doing those things. But one of the things that has always plagued him is his relationship with the refs, where it always looks like he is complaining or he's calling out refs or he's crying about fouls. And it has come to a point online where NBA Twitter and even some of these big names in NBA media have had fully enough. They are done with it. And now, he gets fined $50,000 for throwing up the money signs at the referees, after he didn't get a foul call. I think it was a charge. He wanted a charge call. He didn't get that. So he was actually trying to play defense and didn't get the foul for that. Do you sense that same thing where the shift is here and he is being looked at as being one of these evil heels in the NBA? Is that a role that he can embrace? It's just dude, just be the bad guy, right? The smiling thing and the laughing thing and the cute jokes. You could be that off the court, but just embrace being a bad guy.
Is it not super similar to Timothée Chalamet? The overexposure, he got to the finals with the Dallas Mavericks, but before that, it was all, wow, look at this artist on the floor. Look at this guy with a mastery of the game. Why? Because how many people were watching the Dallas Mavericks? Not that many. Not at the beginning of his career when they weren't winning a ton. When they acquired Kyrie, now people started watching. And now they start watching and, oh my God, he gets them to the finals. And he's this unbelievable offensive player. And then in the middle of the night, he's traded to the Los Angeles Lakers alongside LeBron James. And it's, oh my God, they're going to run the league and he's going to be a superstar. And now people are watching every game. And now people are watching every moment. And so rather than consuming so many of his games through highlights, through the best moments and the best moments that are curated for us, similar to press tour with puppies or chicken wings or whatever it may be, you're watching every single second. And when you're watching every single second, you grow to learn, yeah, Luka's a guy who complains to the refs. And I think that there's been a level of frustration with the amount of success that this team has had this year. I think they had higher expectations for what they were going to be. I think that there are some complicated dynamics between him and LeBron James. And look, even if LeBron knows Luka's the guy, it has not been since his first season in Miami where LeBron has not been fully in control as the guy, right? Dwayne Wade still was the sort of captain and ran the franchise. But after that first year where they lost to Dallas, D Wade went to LeBron and said, hey man, it's your team. So for 15 years after running the Cleveland franchise on his own, the way that Luka got to do in Dallas, LeBron is used to being the man. And now Luka comes in and, they've shifted the franchise to be, hey, we're going to build around him. And so I think for Luka, you see this guy who's frustrated by the lack of success. We're not going to dive into it, but he's got stuff going on off the court that can probably make you a little ornery, like that can probably make you a little frustrated. And then you go into your job, and any of us have gone through this. You have something going on outside of work. You come in, and the smallest thing that wouldn't bother you on a normal day starts bothering you even more. And you might respond emotionally to a coworker in a way that you wouldn't normally, right? And it might not be outbursts. It's certainly not in front of 40,000 people or 28,000 people or whatever fits in their arena. But for Luka, all eyes are on him at a time in his life where one of the great franchises in the league has been handed off to him. And really outside, like over the last year, man, this guy's gotten criticism for his body, then got into great shape, and then now continues to get criticism for his body. He's got stuff going on the personal side. He's got these strange dynamics with the franchise and one of the pillars of that franchise. Like, it's a weird time to be Luka. And I don't know that he is a true heel. I think people like to hate stuff, as is obvious. But I also think, like, come on, man. It's
also a weird dynamic when your friend is now your boss, right?
Yes.
Where JJ Redick was like a mentor
Yes.
to Luka, and JJ Redick had this podcast, and Luka was a guest on the podcast, and they were, BSing back and forth, and that relationship is now different, where it's like Luka now has to listen to his friend, and his friend is the one who was bossing him around and telling him when he's been bad and when he's been good. So there are a lot of dynamics that go into what's happening. But I just look at somebody like SGA, and I told you I am a Coach Cal stan. SGA,
I love SGA.
He's fully embraced everything about it. Oh, you want to call me a foul merchant? I don't care. I'm not changing the way that I'm playing because people are BSing me online. Don't care. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to play the same game every game. I am going to be the guy, that dude. Every game, I'm going to come out after the game, and I'm going to hit you with these quotes. I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to play at an MVP level. I think he's gone 126 straight games, scoring 20-plus points, which is just unbelievable. He's about to win back-to-back MVP awards. Oklahoma City looks like another runaway favorite to win back-to-back NBA titles, and they could be this good of a team for the next few years just because of the core that they built around it. But I look at somebody like SGA, where it's just like, dude, he just embraces it. He just embraces everything about the game. He gets fouled. He goes up, shoots his free throws. That's it. Like he just moves on. He hits game winners. But I just think that like Luka needs to embrace that. Like just embrace your role. Be a villain.
I don't disagree, and I think being a villain would be fun. But I also think that like SGA is an example of getting an opportunity to grow into it. Because imagine if instead of being traded for Paul George and going to Oklahoma City and a team slowly building around you to where you were one of the 5 best players in the league and most of common sports fandom didn't even know your name, didn't even know you existed because you were out in Oklahoma City and you guys weren't winning yet. And then slowly but surely you build this team, and now you have nothing but success. So not only is it what will happen for him if and when one day there is any level of mismanagement, because God, that front office has done a great job, but any level of mismanagement of the roster, and now they're losing, and now he's getting called a foul merchant, and now all of a sudden maybe some of those foul calls aren't going his way because they're not the most dominant team in the league, and he's not the reigning MVP. Or, and this is the scenario I thought of as you were talking about it, what if he never gets traded to Oklahoma City and he is the young rising star on Kawhi Leonard's Clippers? And as time goes on and Kawhi gets older and is missing games, there's a power struggle for who is truly the face of the franchise. And they're out in LA, and there's a different conversation happening in Los Angeles than there is in Oklahoma City. Those factors weigh into all of this. Now, one of the magical things about Shai is not only that he can draw a foul, but I almost never see him complaining when he doesn't get that foul call. The argument would be he gets most foul calls, but there's an art to that. Dwayne Wade did the same thing, where the way that you can contort your body and keep it close to the ground and explode up into contact and finish through it, there's an art to it, and I think SGA does it. I don't find him to be James Harden, who used to like hook people's arms and draw fouls in a way that did feel sort of cheap. But my goodness, like the paths have been very, very different. And I think part of what this is for Luka now is like, this is a big fork in the road in your career. How do you handle the rest of the season? How do you handle your off season when LeBron does end up leaving and they build a team around you? And what does it look like going into next year? What's your mentality? Do you let this affect you, or do you continue to go out and play your game and maybe embrace, yeah, you know what? I am the guy. I am the Lakers. I was sent here. And like you've talked about, Coca, I'm going to be the villain, and I'm okay with that.
All right, we've got 2 minutes left here, so I just want to get your quick thoughts on the World Baseball Classic. Team USA, I talked to Adnan about it in the first hour. Team USA needs almost a miracle tonight. They need Italy to either win the game, or they need Mexico to score 5 or more runs in this game. Have you been watching the games? What is the sense that you're getting about this USA team? You know, they had the situation with Cal Raleigh not wanting to shake Randy Arozarena's hand, who's his own teammate.
Yeah.
Where are you at with Team USA and the World Baseball Classic in general in the next give me a minute on it?
Yeah, I think that it's such a strange scenario because I think despite more guys lining themselves up to play this time around, there still seems to be an attitude by some, and really just by the projection of the team, that it doesn't quite matter to them the same way that it does to these other guys. And I think more so than a product of any sort of like American elitism or lack of passion, it is a result of showcase baseball. These guys are used to playing on these sort of super teams and going through the motions and playing a few innings and showcasing themselves, and wins and losses in those scenarios don't actually matter. Nobody cares if your showcase team really wins. If you're the most dominant, you're gonna, but it's about you going out and doing your thing. And the collective camaraderie of these teams from these other countries, how much it matters to them, it's blasted through the screen. I do think that if they win yesterday, we're not even having this conversation. Mm-hmm. They're super dominant. None of it might matter. But after a game like that, where it felt like maybe they just weren't taking it as seriously as they should, led by Mark DeRosa, which you guys did a good job covering that part in the first part of Nothing Personal. Strange day for them to have to root for Mexico to win, but by scoring 5 runs. Like they need an offensive outburst, and it's super bizarre.
Jeremy, thank you so much for filling in. I really appreciated talking with you, and I needed this. I needed you to have your platform to get this heat talk off before Dan and the rest of the crew ultimately shut you down. So thank you.
It was good rehearsal.
Yeah, David should be back tomorrow. And once again, here, it's just business. This was Nothing Personal.